Now, with these fresh ideas in mind, it's only fitting that we take a closer look at the pivotal role that local actors can play in driving the energy transition. Now, during the next 90 minutes, we are going to get quite concrete examples from different communities and stakeholders that are active contributors in transforming either their local energy system or their way of living in order to accelerate the shift to a low-carbon future. Now, we're going to start by taking a trip to Germany, where the energy transition looks slightly different from the Norwegian one. In Germany, we meet human geographer Stefanie Baasch. She is head of the research group Social, Ecological Governance and Justice at the Sustainability Research Center ARTEC at the University of Bremen. There she focuses on topics like justice, conflict, governance, and participation in social ecological transformations, both on a local level and at global scale. Now, today, she wants to enlighten us on the concept of citizen energy cooperatives and their significance in the German energy system by the example of Wolfhagen. I'm not going to say more than that, just leave the floor to Stefanie Baasch, so please give her a warm welcome as well.
So thank you so much for inviting, and thank you for giving the introduction, so I don't have to say any more words on the introduction. That's great. Saves me a couple of minutes. So I will start with a little, because as you already mentioned, the German energy transition has been slightly different from the Norwegian one. I just give you a very, very brief introduction how it all began. So we had some first movers in the 1990s. It was very engineers who were looking for other ways of generating energies, coming up in the 1980s and a little bit earlier with the first experimental wind power plants, photovoltaic panels, etc., and also passive houses, but on a very, very small scale and a very experimental scale on local levels, popping up here and there all over Germany, all over Europe, and also in other places. And their motivation was mainly driven by they wanted to exit the fossil and the nuclear energy, which was in Germany at that time, well, about 100%. And there were 5 big energy suppliers, regional energy suppliers in Germany, who were owning the market, which changes with the privatization and liberalization of the European energy markets later. But the important thing for the actors and stakeholders is, so these under very uncertain conditions, a lot of communities and a lot of different places started to emerge new governance structures, new organizational forms like farmers' cooperatives for biogas plants, new practices and actor landscapes. So in very different regions, cities and villages. And these new energy actors entering the energy market, now the liberalized energy markets of the in Germany, were farmers, private stakeholders, investment funds, banks, project planners, but also municipalities itself. So we have 3, well, very important groundbreaking national laws. So the 1991 feed-in law, which allowed for the first time other energy suppliers to feed energy into the grid. The 1998 law, which the liberalization of the energy markets would give the consumers for the first time in Germany the choice to choose their energy suppliers. So a lot of new energy suppliers entered the market. And in 2000, that was the ramp up of the German decentralized energy transition with the Renewable Energy Act, with fixed feed-in tariffs, which gives the new energy suppliers, the new energy actors, somehow the security for their investment in the new market. So this is a very brief introduction. So the role of municipalities to explain why they are so strong in the decentralized energy transition in Germany is, on one hand, very much based on the legal situation, because in Germany the federal and the state constitution grants municipalities the right of local self-government for services of general interest, including the energy supply, which means that by the new conditions under the new laws, it was able for the municipalities to remunicipalize the energy supply and the networks. And this had led to, since 2005, to more than 200 networks that have been remunicipalized, is now operated by municipal utilities, and about approximately 130 municipal utilities have been newly established. Of course, there have been some earlier that have been municipal utilities all the time. Some have been privatized before, so quite complex. But this opportunity, this led to the opportunity to introduce social, environmental, and democratic components into a regional or municipal energy system, which means municipality could decide upon price control or tariffs, could decide upon on renewable energy obligations, and also could decide upon how much citizen engagement they wanted to foster, how they give citizens the opportunity to participate in these processes. So this is the win-win situation for communities, individuals, aka citizens, and benefit sharing and participation in decision making, which has led in Germany to the emergence of a lot of citizen energy cooperatives, and this is a very simple way to put it. Of course, it's much more complex, but just to get you an idea is we have the citizens that are able to invest in a citizen energy cooperative, and these cooperatives have the legal form that they have one person, one vote. So it's quite democratic within. They are building, operating, or investing in these renewable energy plants which produce power, heat, and cooling. So the energy goes into the power grid, because we don't have off-grid municipalities in Germany. And this, or the heat, directly goes back to the citizens, or at least the benefits go back to the citizens. So today we have a quite various numbers of actors and forms of these energy communities and cooperatives. They are including farmers, legal entities, associations, civil law partnerships, all kind of different legal forms, but also quite a great amount of municipalities itself are members within those energy communities. We have public utilities, regional suppliers. And one thing is for sure, large corporations, large energy companies are never involved in such energy communities in Germany. So it's very local, regional based. Today we have around 2,500 or 3,000 citizen energy communities, 1/3 local energy cooperatives with approximately 220,000 members. And the cooperatives have invested 3.2 billion in local energy transition. So in 2024, the cooperatives produced around 8 terawatt, which is not a huge amount, but it has much more effects on people are able to invest their money and in decision making in energy supply. So one example I would just briefly give you an idea, and I like this quote from the head of the municipal utilities in 2012 very much, who said, "Climate policy is not made in Durban or Kyoto, it's made at the very local level." So today we have in Wolfhagen a situation there we have the public municipalities, the Stadtwerke Wolfhagen, and we have the citizen energy cooperatives, who are both joint operators of a solar park, of a wind park. And on the other side, you see the tractor. We have farmers, different kind of farmers association, and 36 farmers themselves who have invested, jointly invested in biogas plant and also in the expansion of a heat network, a local heat network. So you see that here energy and heat supply in this municipality is very much public-private cooperation. To give you the last slide, an idea about the energy transition actors. We have the core actors today, which is the municipal utility. We have the citizen cooperative, who is a 25% shareholder within the municipal utility. So they do have a very, very direct say in all the decision making. And we have an energy agency. I will not go into the detail, but it's one of the honest brokers. It's a public entity which also is responsible for public buildings, energy provision in public buildings, but they also do a lot of outreach, like education in schools, energy educations on a broader level, advice for citizens, etc., etc. And you see all these actors on the right-hand side, the red ones, these are all kinds of companies. Some new companies who were attracted by the municipality focus on renewable energy, like Energy Glass, which is now producing the largest energy-efficient glass for skyscrapers in Europe. And also we have a number of other organizations. The schools are very much involved in education all around energy sustainability, and they do have their examples just next door. So the key findings, I was investigating or working with this community for about 15 years, so I know how the process emerged. So the most important thing were that they had democratic participatory frameworks, low financial barriers for entering the citizen cooperative. So you need 50 euros, and then you could become a member. And they set the price so low because they wanted the people to be able to become a member of the citizen cooperative. And they had a high level of trust, not from the very beginning. And yes, there had been a lot of conflicts, especially around the wind park. But it was a very intensive and long-term process on, for example, the local cinema screened An Inconvenient Truth. And the head of the municipality, the mayor, the politicians were sitting there, and after the screening of the film were debating with the people, okay, what can we do on this local level? How can we take responsibility for our own energy consumption? And what can we do here? So it was a very intense process over years and years. It was not from one day to the other. And it was a very transparent process in the decision making as well. So we have this far-reaching partnership-based co-design in municipal energy policy, and we see that this process was organized with different forms of participation. So we have this formal participation, which means you become a member of the citizen cooperative, which is a formal process, what they do's and don'ts. But they have a lot of informal processes, like they had discussions, but they also had like an energy festival within the community. They had a lot of experimental things, like you could, the municipality rented out e-car, and people could hire it for a couple of days for free. And then they, of course, they had to answer a survey that I could use then for science. And they also have self-empowering by coming up with ideas and presenting their ideas, or thinking about, okay, how can we help each other out when it comes to retrofitting buildings, etc. So we have this broad form of different participation there. And I think one of the most important thing also is that the benefits are not only enjoyed by members of the Citizens Energy Cooperative. It was not making much profit. They said they limit the profits to 3%, and all the rest of the profit is going to more social interventions, more social programs, and also the broader community benefited from the local value creation and access to advisory services, which is, of course, contributing to distributive justice. So that was a 20-year process put in a nutshell in 12 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Now, let's move from the municipalities and to the regional level and look at how the regional level can contribute actively to the energy transition when their formal responsibility is relatively limited. Now, how can they do that? And that is a question our next speaker keeps asking herself. Mari Roald Bern, she is Senior Advisor for Energy and Climate at the County Council of Trøndelag in mid-Norway, and she was actively involved in developing a plan for the energy transition that the County Council adopted in June this year. Now, the plan places particular emphasis on the county authorities' role as a catalyst for societal development. Oh, do you need a clicker? Yeah, there it is. And Mari Roald Bern, who is behind me, will take us through some of the most important aspects of the plan, and not to forget the processes behind the plan. She's also going to give us, I'm just mentioning that now, a short summary from Tuesday's VISTA program, when Norwegian municipalities met and discussed the energy transition. So she's here already, but like everyone else, she deserves a nice round of applause. Mari Roald Bern, take it away.
So thank you very much for the invitation. I will talk a little bit about what is in our toolbox and the challenge that we see from the region. Trøndelag is a region in Norway with the size of Denmark, approximately 500,000 inhabitants, with Trondheim being the biggest city, and the rest of the population living along the coast. Yes. So what is a region responsible of? A region has a service provision responsibility towards regarding the county roads, the public transport, the upper secondary schooling, and also dental health. I will not talk about that service provision responsibilities. I will talk about regional development. And the regional reform in Norway sketched out 3 responsibilities. The region should provide a strategic direction. It should mobilize its inhabitants, economic actors, and other stakeholders, and coordinate it. And coordination is maybe a very difficult thing when we talk about the energy transition. We are the first level to meet very sectorized state, so that the goals and the means and the policies coming from agriculture, energy, transport, industry are not aligned. They are incoherent. And the toolbox that we have to reach those not coherent goals are also insufficient. And it gets worse when you go down to the municipal level. But to me, that's also the most inspiring part of my job, because I believe it's a very crucial role. I believe that we need democratic legitimacy for a long-term transition process. And that starts locally, and it continues on the regional level. This is how the energy system in Trøndelag looks like. This is a statistic that the Norwegian state does not provide us with. Akershus fylkeskommune put up the statistics that we need to understand our energy system. And then we have the plan for the energy transition, the regional plan that was amended in June. I will say something about the process afterwards. But we have described 5 strategies. How can we reach the goals of competitiveness, of climate, and social development based on this energy system? Because the energy system is not the goal in itself. It makes us heat our houses. It makes us travel from one place to another. It drives industry and creates work. We have tried to describe what is the municipal and the regional role. What are the infrastructure investments that we need in the energy system. We have tried to describe the need for effect when we electrify industries and transport. It's not necessarily that we need so much more electricity, but we need it in another way, the effect, behov. The electricity that we consume in Trondheim or in Trøndelag, it's to a high degree renewable, but we waste it heating our houses. We need to stop using electricity for heating purposes when we have so many more important areas to use power. And then, of course, half of the energy consumption in our region is fossil. We need to have that transformed from the fossil to the renewable sources. So those are the goals, or that is the strategic direction that we sketched out. How did we get there? It started with a political initiative. The politicians asked us in the administration, please make an energy strategy into June 2022. We went through an informal and a formal process with the electricity and the energy sector in the region. We had informal meetings with the stakeholders, industry, environmental groups, Sami groups, youth, the research and development community, you name it. But maybe what is, for me, the most important thing to say in this slide is that it's a very humbling process to be in a planning process, because no matter who you talk to, they are convinced that they have understood something that the others haven't understood, and they should just start to understand their perspective. So trying to find a way to develop a common understanding, what is our problem, what are the solutions that we need to describe, it's interesting. And of course, then we are not, when you are in a planning process, we talked about it today, the uncertainties and the risks and unexpected happenings. From 2022 to 2025, there were so many things that occurred in the landscape around us. All of a sudden, nuclear energy was a big issue in the energy policy debate in Norway. Hydrogen project came and they died. Data centers entered the whole discourse on value creation. Norgespris came up. How should we inform our politicians about Norgespris and the effect of Norgespris? And of course, the national change of government because of EU directives making Senterpartiet leave the government. Yes. So now the plan is amended, so what do we do now? Now we try to mobilize for the energy transition. And what is the most difficult and most important thing for us now is how to provide guidance to the municipalities. If we are going to succeed with an energy transition, we need a much closer linkage between the energy system and how we plan land use. And the municipalities and the state is not rigged for that. We don't think about land use planning when we think about energy in a sufficient degree. Then the localization of data centers is a really big headache for us now. You have huge power consumers located where you cannot use the waste heat. It's a big issue for us. Grid development, there is no good mechanisms ensuring coordination across governance levels, state, regional, local, when it comes to grid. And we know it's very important. And then, of course, we need to do this collaboration with the knowledge environment around us. We know we need to learn, we need to share from other local, what they do locally, what they do in other regions, what do the Swedes do, the Danes do, how can we be better in progressing. And then we do the coordination of the energy transition. I will just touch on two things. There are quite considerable economic incentives, especially related to decarbonizing the industry from various public funding actors. SIVA, Innovation Norway, the Norwegian Research Council, Enova. They all have financial instruments, and they're not necessarily talking well to each other, not necessarily building, strengthening each other. We can try to make that better. We can also try to use regional funding mechanisms to build and start those projects that can mount until to more important and bigger national projects. For example, here, this green industrial lift, we have 15 industrial hubs in Trøndelag now. How can we develop industrial symbiosis on these sites, and how can we lift them up into national and European project consortia? On policy development, I will mention two things. We have mapped surplus heat. The surplus heat from these kind of industries in Trøndelag amounts to 2.6 terawatt hours. We could heat 220,000 households with the surplus heat. Now we know it, it's out there, and we need to, how can we actually deliver on that we use that waste heat? And the same thing is for the residues. Trøndelag is a very important agriculture and aquaculture region. The residues from those areas are, it has an energy potential of 1.4 terawatt hours if we use it in biogas and as bioenergy. We need to realize that potential. Yes, and so now I come to the summing up. Also summing up the results from the workshop that was here on Tuesday. The main challenges that we see is sector regulation. It's quite difficult, even though you work full-time, to understand what does the regulatory framework mean, because the sector regulation of heat is not really coherent with the one on power, with the one on fuels, with the one on land use, with the one in transport, with the one on nature. And all of these sectors have their own way of describing things. The discourses are very specialized. If you try to understand energy technology and you think, okay, now I can understand what they mean, then it's something completely different when you switch from grid to heat. And then if you try to understand the discourse on markets, what is happening here? What is the Nord Pole? What are the trading mechanisms? And then you try to understand the policy level, European Union, national level. Yes. And that, I think, it gives, it results in a democratic, how do you say, underskudd? Yeah, deficit. Thank you. And the third thing that I think we shouldn't think about it as something that we have to overcome. We should embrace it, that there are some incommensurable values. There are some things that we can measure in terawatt hours and in kroners, and there's some things that are not measurable. It doesn't mean that they're less valuable, because it's very instinct that nature has its own value without money, trust has its own value without measuring it. And that's just, we need to keep that. The energy, I started to work in the county working on the climate transition, and I find working on energy seems more meaningful. Maybe it's just because it's more tangible than the climate challenge. I think there are great opportunities related to the democratic processes. We have a really good system dividing powers between executive and legislative and jurisdictional power. We need to keep that, we need to develop that, but we do not, I feel very strongly about keeping our democratic institutions. And I think the distributed and digitalized energy system actually can help us on that way. And the last opportunity is that democratically elected representatives in the municipalities in Norway, they are there. They are share owners in grid companies, in power companies, but they don't. The whole energy complex, it's difficult for them to grasp. And we need, from the local administration, we need to communicate clearly so that they can understand the possible fields of action for political choices within this. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mari. And there are questions popping in for you as well, so we're going to get to those afterwards when you join us for the discussion. So let's take another trip abroad, and this time to Denmark and to the island of Samsø, which is located east of Jutland, north of Fyn, and west of Zealand. 20 years ago, today actually, Samsø was designated Denmark's renewable energy island, and the process of transforming their energy system to purely renewables began. Small steps at first, then gradually bigger steps were taken. Malene Lundén, she is both an artist and a developer at Samsø Energiakademi, and she has been working with the transformation since the beginning. To her, it's imperative to count the human resources into the equation and to use the energy transition to educate an entire population. So how are they doing at Samsø? And is life better now than it was before the transformation started? Let's find out by leaving the floor to Malene Lundén. Take it away.
I will start slowly because we have get a lot of information, a lot of data. As I talk to some of the students, it will take me 3 months to digest all the information I have received today. And how do I go back and tell my islanders what I have experienced? Because you also need to know that I'm here on behalf of them. I'm not here on behalf of myself. So they will always ask me, did you do it well? Because they also know that I'm unpredictable. Like if you look at the wall, I just want to show you, because I'm a curator, and I'm so safe when I see the fox up there. So it's just to share that I'm a little bit a fox. I will normally not have been a part of an energy transition. So it's just to say to you, you can relax now. Take a deep breath. And it's not to be unseriousness, because I mean it deeply seriousness. Yeah. What you see up here is, you could say, I'm an artist, how do we present very complicated data to ordinary, uneducated people? How do we do that? Think about that. When I meet my farmer, and I say to him about a lot of complicated things, he will step behind and think, is she trying to convince me? So how I started to look, I'm an outsider who have imported, as they say about me, from Copenhagen. So therefore, I'm married to a local native. That helps a bit. But I just want to show you this. So when I come there, I was 21 years, and I started to look at the behavior because I'm a documentary photographer. I started to look and think, how do they meet? How do they interact? What do they talk about? How is the culture here? So therefore, I have read Sophia's world, and I wrote to Øystein Gardner and asked him if I could use one of his history in a book about not knowing how to see the energy transition in the future. Because all the islanders, when we said, oh, we're going to be an energy island, they were like, yeah, good with you. You can do it, but we keep on going. So there was a lot of images that we needed to translate into their understanding. And that's why I used the tree blind spot in the book. And Øystein Gardner's story was about how do you ask question with a question? And that was also to be aware that we were not expert, those who are working with the green transition. We were ordinaries, generalists. We were not expert. And that was a huge gap into, the respect to the receivers. So you can say today, and it was in 1997, I also want to take a step on your presentation. Actually, Kyoto at the COP8 meeting was a big change for Denmark because our minister went home and he promised to reduce the CO2 amount, and he actually did it. And that's why I stand here today, because one of his methods was to point out an island to be self-supplied with energy over 10 years. And he have done the economical frame setting, and you could say it was not only possible for the small island in the center of Denmark, but it was possible to all small places in Denmark. So it's just and we didn't get a lot of money. So what we got was the title, the awareness, and suddenly we could call the minister directly. And it's also needed to say we had a slaughterhouse, and it was closing. And the spirit of the island was the last man shut down the power. So imagine to live on an island where the atmosphere is like that. So then we won the competition. The energy, our regional energy company would like to have the title and the possibility to run it, but we took it back. And there we actually started to do workshops where we invited the whole municipality, the government here, and the ordinary people into process. And imagine a farmer coming into the door to a room where he never have been talked in a circle, talk with a talking stick, a graphic designer drawing the whole process. They were like, what is going on here? It's a bunch of hippies who are going to convince us to do something that we really don't like. So it's just to say, one of the key methods in our work still after more than 20 years is to ask question with a question. And you can find the story by Øystein. It's just to give you a list of how you don't need to read it all because you have read a lot. And so it's just to give you a kind of power with the letters that we have actually been there. Our target was to be self-supplied with energy in 10 years, 2 political period, and that actually helped the process. So we didn't need to speed up everything. We had actually time to the election, locally and national, because when you do this transition, there's a lot of parameters I even would bother you with. but it raised a lot of awareness, it raised a change in mindset. So therefore, we reached it already in 2007. There we were 70% self-supplied with electricity. And you could say we were consumers importing oil. Suddenly we were producers exporting electricity. That was a huge, you should see people go around in the street, oh, that is my windmill. You know, there was a proudness lifting up that actually gave people a better night's sleep. So therefore, we in 2021, we have won a lot of prizes, but we get recognition in UN in 2020 in Glasgow, together with Paris and Guatemala in South America, to be the UN Global Climate Action Award winner. What? But what do you think? But what do you think the farmers say? Yeah, come on. We are not, for sale for this kind of top-down. So you could say in 2010, I started also to look at what have we learned, and the farmer was like, why should we look at that? And I said, but maybe you are leaders, and a farmer will never give himself that label. But then I did a tool called a guide for local pioneers communities. And you can come and look at it. I researched together with 40 people from different sectors, and we were looking about the 10 years of being renewable energy. What was the main method? What was the target? What was the word we used? So therefore, you could say we have clustered the past and the present and the future, and that's part of our family, because when you are an islander, you have this sense of being in a family. So there's a lot of diversity. I will not dig into that. You could say I have worked a lot with communication. So when we started in 1997, we have a version 0.1 from the computer world, the software thinking, that utopia is possible. Then we hit the van. This is difficult. And we had a period of, you can see, from 2003 to 2009. And then we get a new kind of spirit change without being too religious. But then suddenly there was a awareness, common, collective, that there was a common sense. And then we hit again a crisis. It's not easy. In return, it's hard. And now in 5.0, we are in the living map, and we are creating a new atlas together with scientists. And in the future, the county district are guides to democracy. That's how we see the reality in our society. And it's just a small, it's just a small society, so we can say whatever about ourselves. What the society have learned, because we have seminar and workshops and reading groups, is that we don't need to fear the dominant system. The dominant system is important. But what we look at is the emergent system. What is going on there? And you can see when people come up with ideas to make this green transition, there will always be a resistance. But we also, how could you say, look at the language. So the language, how we stand up and speak, is actually a mirror of paradigms. So therefore, we are very aware of the language. And then, how do we amplify? This is the tree horizon. Even if you meet one of my farmers, now I use the farmers, it could also be the plumbers, he will not be afraid and disagree when you said, oh, you're working with the 3 horizons over there. So ordinary people actually get capacity built by the non-profit organization, the Energiakademiet. So that's one of the tools we use when we have meeting about our resource and how we collaborate with that. This is an external context. It's an internal, because I started to work way back. I said we need to have scientists in to prove and to help us to learn what did we actually did together way back. And we do a lot of drawing, because drawing actually appeal to our emotions, you know, and that actually also frame that you are not an expert. So this, every now and then when we have meeting, we have those kind of drawings, because it's easier for the citizens to go home and show their neighbor on the mobile phone that instead of a lot of text and sentence. Yeah, and you could say we have learned to work with opposing interest, but common direction and condition. Community is conditioned by disagreement. Many mistakenly believe that we must agree. We know that we have different interests, but we behave peacefully. And a strong, sustainable, and robust community must share locality, activity, and mentality. This, people think, oh, I have heard that, I know that. But when it comes to action, sometimes we forgot the mentality or the locality. And this is our compass or our mandala that we have been digest with an anthropologist who have moved to the island, and we use that today when we get up a new project. And I'm curious, I just want to engage you a bit before I end. Could you point in the direction where north is? Put your arms up. I'm curious. Put it up so we all can share. You know, it's, yeah. You can see, if you look around, you could not see it because you sit in lines, but you all point in different directions. Thank you. That gives me the clue to, I will end in soon, but the north is over there. I checked it. So it's just to say, when we start up new transformation, then we need to hold each other in the hand to find the direction, because that can be pretty difficult. So I will just announce my new project. I get a big funding from Velux, and now we will start to work. We take the next 6.0. We will start to work with the farmers and locate the resource to be, how can you say, prepared to the climate change. Because we are a small island with a coastline, so we will see a lot of things. Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you, Malene. Now, the fourth and final speaker in this session, you get a small preview there already. She wants to challenge us to do power differently. And I know that Jin In is eager to explain what she means by that, but let me introduce you to her first. She's an author, a political strategist, and she coins herself as a cultural climatist. She is the author of the first book in the sustainability series from Cambridge University Press, entitled Girl Power, Sustainability, Empowerment and Justice. She's also the founder of the non-profit organization for girls' global leadership. Now, her CV includes several examples of Jin In being the first at many different things, but it would take me hours to name them all. Instead, I will leave the floor to her so that she can explain the concept of doing power differently and how that may be a way of moving the global energy transition forward. So please welcome Jin In to the podium.
Thank you so much. I am usually the only person that is talking in this topic, but I see this conference was brilliantly designed where I speak after my colleague here, because I do not feel alone. And in fact, I do coin myself as cultural climatist, which is the intersection of society, politics, and our value and habits. And I know this is being recorded, but for full disclosure, I too challenge power, and the one that I have challenged for more than 2 decades and my whole professional life is actually not a small island, but a country called United States of America. And I worked for 3 presidential administration. So full disclosure, President Bush, President Obama, and first President Trump. So ask away any questions. I am now an independent and I could speak freely. So I love the theme also because it is about past, present, and future. And my mentor said that in order to see full sight, you need hindsight, foresight, and insight. So let's start with that. And so let's look at the future. A great French philosopher and a statesman actually way back when said nothing else in the world, not all the armies is so powerful as an idea whose time has come. At that time, he was talking about social change and powerful social movements that overpowers the military might. And now I'm here to talk about the most powerful, what I believe the most powerful, but you'll also see how powerful they are, and most sustainable renewable energy. So let's start with a very simple question. You all are extremely highly educated group. We're here at the Norwegian Academy. This simple question, globally, are there more males or are there more females? Just by show of hands, and I'll make it easy. How many think there's more males? Okay, a few of you, very brave soul. If I had more time, I would ask why you think that. Then the rest of you must think there's more females, is that correct? And that's just for solidarity. Show of hands, how many think there's more females? Look at those hands. But this is why I get to speak. There's actually more males. And in fact, there is so much more males, and this is the trend. The last time the planet was gender balanced was 1960. This is a World Bank population data, and it has been dramatically increasing, especially during the latter 60s, 70s, and 80s, and finally leveling off. And so this is what the female population looks like. And if we created a country with just extra males, it would be the 21st most populous nation, and that's about the population of France. So how could this be? Because for a whole millennium, the 3 deadliest words worldwide was, it's a girl. And in fact, how do we see this? More baby girls have been aborted and killed or neglected to die. A simple calculation, than the total number of all the people who died of all the wars of the 20th century. Another way to calculate it is the total number that have been killed from all the genocide of the 20th century. And if I had more time, I'll prove to you by data, but I actually encourage you to buy the book. Cambridge University Press gets the proceeds, so it's not on me, to really look at how extraordinarily skewed this number has been. And in fact, The Economist finally started to pay attention at the turn of the new millennium. But this isn't just a birth problem. Maybe we should just all go out and have more babies and have girls. But sadly, their trajectory is awful. So globally, every 2 seconds, a girl is forced to marry. So just during my 10-minute talk, that would be 300 girls. And just during today's convening, more than 14,000 girls. So it's not just about marriage. They also become teen mothers. And then, of course, it's this violence against women, which is never about sex. It's actually about power. And 1 out of every 10 girls are raped and forced into sexual act. But here's the real sadness, which I was shocked to learn just a few weeks ago. Norway, 1 out of every 6 girls of age, teenagers, have reported rape. So again, at the turn of the millennium, the World Economic Forum and the United Nations started to really focus on this. They called it the Millennium Development Goals. And goal number 3 was gender equality and women's empowerment. But where are we today? Let's look. So they call it the gender gap, and they are counting the number of males versus females in 4 different sectors: education, political participation, economic opportunity, and health. So North America, we're trying to close the gap, so we want 100%. North America has closed 76%, Europe 75%. You see the numbers are just getting smaller and smaller. And surprisingly or not surprisingly, the worst region on the planet is the Middle East. It's also the most violent region on the planet. So what does this mean? Well, this means, sadly, since the World Economic Forum has been collecting this data, which is 2006, nearly 20 years, how much progress have we made? Any guesses? Sadly, 0.4%, which means it's going to take 123 years for us to reach gender parity. And I don't know, the youngest in the room, I know they have left, but I can even guarantee if they were here, we will all be dead. We will not realize it in our lifetime. So I'm going to go straight to the case that we are so excited about, although I have done this work interdisciplinary, multidisciplinary, and usually I'm at the Pentagon making this case to the Department of Defense. But climate change has also become at the forefront, and I'm so glad that this is also the topic of this conference as well. So let's look at why climate change is sexist. So this is Global South data. Some of you may not know, but the extraordinary number of time and energy that girls and women spend, but specifically girls. So it doesn't even compare to males. A Tanzanian man spends 500 hours per year, whereas Tanzanian female spends 2,000 hours per year. And then also collecting just basic stuff like wood and water. A girl spends 3.5 times more than boys, but here's the kicker, we think men are doing more work, 7 times more than adult males. And globally, women and girls spend more than 200 million hours every single day collecting water. And more than that, 266 million hours a day looking for toilets. Shocking. And in fact, today we have more mobile phones on this planet than toilets. So, that's looking weird, but hopefully you can read and follow along. But this isn't just in Global South. This is also right here in Norway, in the United States, in the richest countries. So women and girls are more likely to die from climate disaster, and they're also more likely to die or cause death by indoor air pollution. But it's really about the economic loss of what we're currently going through. It's this extreme heat that we're all facing. For female, it's 260% times more, and for males, it's 76% times more. So I just looked at easily Europe, what this is costing. Again, I think we are having a little, sorry, that's about 450 billion euros. Maybe that's why it was covered, because we're embarrassed to show this, which is about 13 billion euros that we're spending on extreme heat-related costs. Now, this is 30 years of data from 1980 to 2020. But sadly, this is what has happened. Europe is the fastest warming continent. So now, the UN Women, why does this matter? Because for every 1 degree rise in temperature, it is associated with nearly 5% rise in intimate partner violence. Maybe Norway thinks they've solved this problem, but sadly you have not. And in fact, in 2023, the government of Norway commissioned a rape committee because of this extraordinary amount of rise in also intimate partner violence, because they were locked during COVID with their offender. So now let's just look at one area. Why do I think they're the most powerful force for change? Because just in agriculture, so there's forestry, there's fishery, there's many other areas, but just in agriculture, if the women and girls were empowered, currently there's about female farmers make up 41% globally, and then 50% or more than 50% actually in the Global South. But they only own 20% of the land. But let's imagine they actually own the land and they have control over agriculture. We would actually be increasing agricultural production. We would also be feeding 150 more mouths. And then this is the area that I think a lot of you are interested in. We will actually be decreasing carbon emission, 2.1 gigaton. And if we pay them $150 $1.5 billion of carbon credit, or $1.1 to $2 trillion of carbon capture. Now, this isn't just my data. This is actually Project Drawdown that brought together over 200 scientists and scholars and philanthropists, and then King Charles, to find the 100 most impactful solution to decrease 1,000 gigaton of carbon emission. And guess who reigns supreme? Girls. And that compiles girls' education, family planning, and their control of domestic household product, like clean cook stove. Now, this is where I like to point out, because I'm pretty positive all of you are working on either EVs or hydropower or all these alternative energy. That's tiny, tiny portion way at the top that you can't even read. And just to compare, 100 gigaton of carbon emission would be decreased by girls' empowerment, and yet for EV, 7.6 gigaton would be decreased. So girls' empowerment is 13 times more powerful than electric vehicles. Nuclear power, you think maybe even better, but no, 3.1 gigaton, which means 32 times girl power would dominate. And hydropower, for anyone who's interested, it's 1.6 gigaton, and that really, truly reigns supreme. Girl power would surpass 61-fold of hydropower. So, and I could go on, but for interest of time, I'll move on. Now the United Nations are pleading to please include women and girls in your climate solution, in your energy transition, in every single way, and not just in climate, but every single sustainable development goals. Because in fact, we are not making the progress. I just showed you only 0.4%. We're increasing even in SDG 5. But I believe that's because that goal is called gender equality, which is counting the number of males versus females, and then the latter part, which is actually about empowerment. So that's because, again, 1% of women and girls live in a country with high women's empowerment and high gender parity. So that could be Norway, parts of Norway, because we actually think this is nirvana. I mean, we've been told Scandinavian countries have really surpassed in gender parity, and which, by the way, I did want to give a shout out. You are number 3. Norway's number 3 in that global gender gap index, and about 86% of your gender gap has closed, but no one is measuring empowerment. They're just counting the number of males and females in these categories. So what is this secret thing called empowerment? Well, I'm honored actually to keynote to the scholars and the students tomorrow, and you will learn more. All of you only get the snapshot because we don't have time. And so this empowerment is actually, the World Bank says, it's a process. It's not something we give to people. It is actually a process. And she's nodding with me because she's my kindred spirit. And it is to increase human capacity for them to make choices. So I believe I'm still the first and only person who've collected global data on what empowerment is to our young people. And I think our young people would probably agree with me because they actually said similar words. So I went around the world, collected this data with actually young women. And here is what the process looks like. In simple form, it's actually agency. It's going from I cannot to I can. They become the authors of their life. So when we ask, what caused this change? So although the Millennium Development Goals have been working on the bottom 2 stack of this pyramid, it's actually the top 2 that accelerates this empowerment. And in fact, I would say the training, the experience, the advocacy, the service, just like these young people experience today, that is what catapults and what I call building empowerment muscle. And I purposely put it in that pyramid because someone even more smarter than me once thought of that too, because this is actually how you build human capacity. All of us, every one of us, whether you live in poor country or rich country, we are all aspiring to self-actualization, our greatest aspiration. So this isn't picture what it looks like. This is gender equality, which is what the UN has spent majority of their time monitoring and creating metrics. Equity is what we call fairness, but empowerment is a whole new ecosystem. What I like to say, give a man a fish, teach a man how to fish, get rid of the whole damn fishing industry because it's toxic. So this is what the new empowerment system must look like. And it's the top two that where we can scale and work as a Norwegian, as in your community, because the bottom two is where it gets impacted. So the top two is the community level, and then second is the people that influence their lives, adults, that what I call human mirrors, like mentors and teachers and role models. But now, I have been saying this, as I said, with 3 different US administration, which has been hard, very, very hard. But that's because I'm going against current reality of power and how we look at power. So in the United States, it's about money. This is what it looks like. We really, truly are the richest nation in history on the planet today. So it's not a joke. Even if UK joined our 50 states and District of Columbia, it would be the poorest state in the Union. Another way we look at power is military might. So you can see that the next 9 countries combined, United States spend extraordinary amount, nearly $1 trillion in military. And the last, and this is what we all can participate and be part of, is this AI revolution. And what we call, instead of arms race, it's the AI race. And so currently, these mega centers, they are truly energy hoarders. They are creating mega centers of gigawatts. You know, I mean, I just want to deploy my girls' empowerment there because I'm like, oh my gosh, they're just going to counteract what we take away from carbon. They're just going to impose more carbon. And sadly, these companies are spending energy at a rate of countries. And this is who we've given power to. So this is why my call to action is to do power differently. We have to look at, as a society, and I want to encourage Norway, who's done so well on gender parity, to look at what power is and why we must do power differently. And so my 3 little tests is it empowerment or is it same old power? Well, sometimes it's disguised. Empowerment must be collective and it must be inclusive, which means the policy must be collective for the collective good, and also it must be inclusive, which means we never do it at the expense of another group. I know a lot of feminist organizations do what we sadly, male bashing. No, never do that. They must be our partners. They must be our collaborators, and they must be our actors. So number 2, empowerment is win-win, not zero-sum. I know, sadly, the president of my nation all loves winning. But if you're the only one winning, you're losing. So we have to really look for win-win solutions. And the last is that empowerment really is about power dynamics, individual and system-wide. And you can all say that because with your spouse, with your boss, it's all a power dynamic. And empowerment works to equalize and balance that power. And what I say, empower people. So I will end. This is my call to action. Another first, an inaugural local magazine wanted to really focus, how do we do power differently? And then this is the book with the QR code. And I will end with another Viktor quote. This is Viktor Frankl that said, the last human freedom is the ability to choose one's own response. And now I'm calling on you to please choose a different way of power. Thank you.
Thank you. So thank you so much. You are now going to share these 2 microphones between the 4 of you. And I've been looking at the questions in Slido. And interesting, I was actually expecting that comment. It is actually formulated as a question. What does it mean, and I'm going to look at Christian as well, what does it mean that the program today casts women around children, youth, the local, while the men deal with economy, politics, and technology? Does it matter? Now, it actually is true that there was a male presenter in this session as well, but he had to forfeit, unfortunately, and vice versa, yes. So, but yeah, we are aware of it, but I don't think it's not done deliberately, anyways. But I'm sure you don't want to comment on that. No. No, we're just going to skip that. So, but anyway, I wanted to point it out. Some clarification points, Stefanie. There are several questions to you regarding the energy cooperatives and so on. So I thought we could just take some of those. Is the local action especially well suited to villages, or does it work as well in large cities?
Well, this remunicipalization, for example, is not limited to small cities. Also, bigger towns like Hamburg, Stuttgart also followed this path. But of course, small villages have another level of trust because usually a lot of people know each other.
And in your opinion, what are the reasons for citizens joining the cooperative or any energy cooperative? Is it for saving money, energy autonomy, social aspects?
It's quite a mix, I would say. I would say the first movers started because they wanted to do something. They wanted to be able to do something better, to contribute or at least take responsibility for them and also for the future generations. But of course, people are also share for benefits. People also share for, well, there are better. If you want to get rich, there are better ways than joining an energy cooperative, of course. But there are multiple benefits depending on the way the citizen cooperative has its own program. Some spend a lot of money in giving also advice, counseling their members, or also the broader publicity. So it's also access to decision making, access to information, etc.
And now I would like for all four of you to join in, because you've all been demonstrating the power of both grassroots initiatives, bottom-up initiatives, and also the empowerment of certain groups, gender-wise or otherwise. How do you, and I think one of you mentioned the word mobilization, mobilize for the transition. Malene, you spoke about the language, how we communicate the transition. And Mari, you also, along with Jin, are talking about the process and the importance of the process. How do you think that we can, I mean, how do we get people on board for joining in, and maybe particularly in a pioneering project as Samsø has been?
Yeah, I just need to check the sound. What we learned backcast was that we needed to engage the plumbers, the citizens, and we actually started some of the, you could say, some of the strategy was not to be political correct in the beginning. Mm-hmm. So what we did was we knew that the plumber who was advising oil furniture, that they will keep on going. When we called them, they said, we don't want to be educated in new technology. Why should we? We have a growing business. So therefore what we did was we said to them, please come to a common meeting about some exciting stuff. And then we called all the plumbers. And when they showed up, we told them the story about alternatives in recommendation of technology. And they actually, because we knew if we went out as non-profit and start to convince, people would say no. Because we would never ever Christmas time come and fix their stove. It will be the plumber who did it. So therefore, we put them all in a room. We showed them an alternative. We showed them the calculation. And that actually, make the big difference. When the plumber first get it, a new product, they started to convince people. And then we opened up with an open house incident where people opened their houses and showed their new stove. And suddenly we created a power into each, instead of us as an organization take the whole responsibility.
owning the process. And Mari, I know that you would like to talk a little bit about the term of acceptance. You mentioned legitimacy as a different word. I mean, what is the better term in these processes?
I think if you expect people to accept, then you think you have the solution that they are supposed to be acceptant of.
So it's a top-down perspective.
Legitimacy is built more bottom-up. Yeah. But I wanted to comment on another issue, and that was we see that the grid operator, Tensio, they have been permitted by the national authority to establish a team that they call the energy coordinators, because the grid capacity is too low, and there's a high degree of frustration amongst local industries that they don't get the grid access that they have. And the fact that the grid operators now are being more open, and it's possible to talk to them. They are not anymore some closed organization that nobody understands. They have spent the first year not doing energy management, but doing anger management on a local level. The degree of frustration is so high, and I think communicating, explaining what is our need as local industries, as local employers. We need grid.
There are actually two questions to you, so you can just keep the microphone, regarding this. Now, one of them is, how concerned are you with the, in parentheses, lack of speed in energy permitting process, grid transformers capacity, versus the need for speed in energy transition?
Well, I think the national auditor made it quite clear that the Department of Energy has not given neither Statnett nor the other grid operators the mandate to actually work towards an energy transition. It's a political choice, and they haven't been given the mandate that they need.
And the second question is, how do you prioritize or prepare for additional energy production needs for creating new jobs, new industries, or decarbonizing existing industries at the regional level?
The prioritization is, of course, a very difficult political issue. And our politicians, and it differs. If we used the experts in teams in NTNU saying, okay, we have a limited grid capacity. Should we spend it on hydrogen projects, on decarbonizing the established industry, or on establishing new industry, battery production? And depending on what you assume and what you want to have, you have three very good and very viable answers. You can choose all three and they're correct. This depends on your assumptions.
Jin, there is a question that I think I would see if you feel compelled to answer to first. Has the petroleum industry contributed to gender inequality? If so, how? And what can we, and that is Norway, take home from that when going into the energy transition? Do you have any reflections on that?
Well, actually, someone noted, I think it was the video professor. So I too was raised in Houston, Texas, and it is a petroleum state, actually. So, and I have to say that's where I built my empowerment muscle. So perhaps they have contributed in some way. But what I don't think it's exclusive to the petroleum industry. I think when you see who holds power in whatever institution, whatever industry, that's a telltale sign. And so that's what we have to challenge. But I also now, having worked for and with U.S. administration, it's an art of politics, right? Because all change is local, all politics is local. And I don't know how many of you know, but while I was here, we had one of the most exciting midterm election. And so one never knows. And you work to participate, and that's what democracy is about. Democracy is not a spectator sport, it's a participation sport. So, I encourage that. And so even, unfortunately, you have to see darkness to see light. And United States is an extraordinary example of the best and the worst of the worst. So we see this huge pendulum swinging.
There's another question for you, actually, Jin. How would actually women empowerment reduce carbon emissions? Could you elaborate on this? And does this imply that women would act differently from what male owners are currently doing?
Actually, yes. So it's not just women's empowerment, it's actually girls' empowerment. And specifically education and family planning, and as well as their control and usage of domestic house product, mainly clean cook stoves. And because those combined have extraordinary impact on society, that's the reason why the Project Drawdown looked at, and they were very gender neutral. I mean, they weren't even looking for any group or target. And in fact, they may even been looking at alternative energy and other renewable sources, but didn't realize it's a hidden renewable and sustainable energy, isn't it? So they completely were shocked themselves when they saw and rearranged the pie who controls that section.
So we could have been fooled into thinking that gender doesn't really matter, but it does, and that's what your figures show.
Right. And in this space of speaking about energy and power, I am truly not only challenging them to look at power, but this really powerful force for renewable energy, human energy.
To the entire panel, I would like to ask you a little bit about trust and the importance of trust in an energy transition when we're looking at bottom-up initiatives. Stefanie, you mentioned trust as a vital part of the energy cooperatives, I think it was, that there is a level of trust. In the Nordic region, we pride ourselves with high levels of trust, and maybe these energy cooperatives should be something for us as well in Norway. But how do you see that? Is that trust threatened currently by the different geopolitical tensions that we're seeing, by the polarization politically, and maybe even in emancipation challenges? What do you think about the level of trust? Is it going to help us with the transition, or are we actually at a tipping point where the trust is about to be lost? The floor is open.
We have wrote a book, I have not wrote it, but on commodity about Nordstrom, who got the not Nobel Prize, but we can see that why we could change our energy system in 7 years was also because of trust, because we are a small amount of people, 3,300. We know a lot about each other. So therefore, the trust is a big driver. It has been a big driver for us, but I think it will look much more diverse if we go to the region, because you could say our center is more reachable, and we can listen to story and all that beside humans. So I'm curious about the trust in the future. What is driving the trust to be a power?
And Mari, you are representing the regional level, and as you explained, the municipalities have the power, basically, and you can coordinate and you can build society and so on. But do you feel that there is a good relationship of trust between the regional level and the municipalities, or do they feel like you're imposing, for instance, this transitional plan on them?
No. If you talk to a mayor he knows his powers and he knows how weak the county council is, so he's not threatened, or her, she. But I wanted to follow up on the common goods, because it's the clean air, it's the pure soils, it's the clean water. It's common goods that we need, and trust is the same thing. There's no market interest that would ever secure and fight for trust. We need to do it ourselves.
Stefanie? I think it's on.
No, it's not. It's not. Oh,
Yes,
it is.
It is.
Just not enlightened. Okay. Well, it very much, I would say, depends. On the local level, trust often is not that huge issue, because people, when they know each other and then we're going through transition processes, they do not necessarily have to agree upon everything, but they do know how people will respond, and there is usually some kind of level, or even a high level of trust among these people, because it seems that there's quite a transparency about what are the positions. When it comes to the very national level, for example, trust in funding schemes, this is a complete different thing, because I think all the projects in the last about 2 decades on energy transition, one sentence always made it to the end report, which is a recommendation for political stakeholders saying we do need much more reliable funding and legal schemes for people to know what they are investing in, for people to know how they should, which path to choose and to follow. And we don't have that. At least in Germany, funding schemes are very much depending on the government. And we just see now today in Germany, there has been quite a step back from very ambitious renewable energy scenarios to much more, let's say, pussyfooted ones. So there is also a reason not to trust into these schemes, for example.
Jin, would you like to elaborate from the other side of the Atlantic Ocean?
Yes. So let me just make you go fast forward to the future, because I'll tell you what a society looks like when there is no trust. And sadly, that is the United States of America. All infrastructure, all institution that even young people trust, it is at an all-time low. So young people trust nothing. Government, corporations, institutions, they have no trust. So what will it look like? Just watch us, and we'll tell you how it goes. I can also tell you, as a social scientist and really understanding about human capacity and how it's developed, there is no way around it without trust. There's a direct line between trust and who we give power to. Because of that trust, we have confidence in, whether it's the financial system or whether it's the state. So I'm actually not sure how anything could be built sustainably and reliably and for long term without trust.
So how do you see that now, as trust is declining?
Yes.
Will we achieve with the energy transition at all?
Well, that's, I believe, where countries like Norway and Finland, these small countries where you all used to be very humble and shy and say, we don't go to war, we don't, we don't go to the people's backyard. Well, now it's time for you to flaunt your models, because you do collective much better. You do trust much better. I think your people and the government has high trust levels. So I think we do need to see these models and see if they're replicable or even just, adaptable to a bigger society, because I was just in China. There's a great debate there, but I think actually many of the people aren't trustworthy. So there's this shift. There's a great population that's not trusting their government or what have you. So they're, even if their media and their source are all blocked, all the young people are using it, right? So they all have Google and they all have, so they're looking into Western media, and thus, really, I think this is where Norway could be influential everywhere.
I think we're going to stop there because time is running out, but maybe one final reflection, if you wish. We've been talking a lot about political, economical, and technological issues and progress and so on that are necessary. But that's my time telling me to stop. But can we do any of that without people's acceptance or legitimacy or approving of the changes that we need to make? Yeah, go ahead, Stefanie.
Okay, I would say every transition is a social project, so it's never without people.
And I guess nobody disagrees with that. So I'm very thankful that you agreed on that. Thank you so much to all four of you, Malene Lundén, Roald Bern, Stefanie Baasch, and Jin In. Thank you so much, all four of you.